YouTube, welcome to Fox Boss 9. It's been a while since I've actually done some real repairs, so let's get into it. Alright, so I haven't done hardly anything on this vehicle you're getting ready to see. Of course, my son, he's in his early 20s, he wanted a van. And I told him, I said, well, if you want me to work on it and help you work on it, and you want something cheap and easy to work on, we'll find you something. And that's what we're going to work on today. Now, when he got this van, it only had, I don't know, about 80,000 miles on it, maybe 90,000 miles. This is an 88. It's an Econoline 150 XL. This is a Clubwagon. It's technically called a Clubwagon, and it's optioned up pretty good considering. It does have air conditioning, which we just installed a new air compressor, power windows, power locks, and we've done a lot of work on this van. We've just replaced the water pump, which required us to also replace the timing cover because the bolts were seized. They were seized in both the timing cover and the other. Like I said, we did replace the air compressor, so the air conditioning works real well. But this is where the problem is to some extent, and that is he lives in here. This is a refrigerator freezer. It runs off 12 volt. There's two deep cycled AGM batteries in there that are can be recharged through this 45 amp smart charger. Then he has a power inverter. He can get a bigger power inverter if he wants, but he's happy with that. He just wants something to keep his laptop charged up and his phone's charged up. We added a fuse box to the back, and then we added all these cabinets. This is running water. This is a battery-powered faucet. There's no water right now because his tanks are empty. He's got holding tanks for this wastewater. Of course, he has a porta potty. It's a flushable porta potty. It holds, quite a bit of water. I think it's 4 gallons up top and 5 in the bottom. And then we built these cabinets. This was already insulated and padded when we got it. It's a steel frame bed that lifts up. There's storage underneath there. We added a max air vent. This thing is incredible, the amount of air that it moves out of here. And then in addition to those batteries that can be charged when he plugs in, which there's a port on the side that you can pull that cord out and plug it in, we just recently added a 170 watt solar panel over there. As you can imagine, like I said at the beginning of the video, E150. Well, E150 doesn't like that kind of weight. Not only that, but he has a generator in this steel box. This box is very heavy, so he has a generator in there. He has a gas can in there. He has some extra quartz oil in there. He has antifreeze in there. Of course, he has this rack, and then we had also added the spare tire on the back, the rack for it, because it was just, the spare tire was just inside the van. So what am I getting at with all that? I'm getting at that his springs are squashed. So much so that they are actually almost reversed arced up here. And he's getting premature wear on his tires because they're actually lifting and turning in. When you take the front weight off these things, these I-beam axles, they turn the wheels in. So basically what's happening is his outside treads are getting really low while the insides are staying deep. He rotated the tires, he had another front end alignment, and it's still doing the same thing. And that's because of all this weight back here. So what we're going to do is add some helper springs. Now, the first thing I want to do before I lift this thing with this extra weight that's involved is make it a little bit more stable. So we've got all new shocks that'll be coming in a couple of days, but what this video is on and what you read in the description is we're going to add a sway bar to the rear because this didn't come with a sway bar. And I didn't see really any videos covering this. What I'm gathering is that this may not be the easiest installation. I might have to do some frame drilling potentially, but I'm hoping, and my fingers are crossed on this, that these holes that they discuss in their very, very brief instructions with very, very remedial drawings, I hope these holes can be located and found. So let me go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to show you the kit again and what you get in it. Now, I will tell you that help support this channel, please, the link that's in the description, use that if you decide you want to order it. You'll get just this kit, this exact same kit. If I can find the Hellwig kit, I will also include the link for that, but both of these have a tendency to go out of stock a lot of times. I'm not sure why, but this ADDCO, they've been around forever, like it says, 1961, made in the USA, and the kit looks pretty complete. A lot of people don't know what they're buying whenever they get this. They think they're just getting a replacement sway bar, but this is a kit to install on a vehicle that does not have an existing sway bar. So that's kind of what these mounts are. These are going to go on the lower shock mounts, and then at that point the bar will mount you know, essentially on that plate with the bushing, and that's where you get your axle part of the mount. And then of course the bar itself will be connected to the frame. Hopefully, there's the L brackets. Hopefully we can locate where those bolts need to go. Again, we'll find out together on this. First thing I got to do though is back the van up on the ramps. In your case, please, I don't need to see the comments of you need to tell people to wear safety glasses, you need to tell people to wear gloves, you need to tell people to chalk their wheels and all that stuff. Listen, everybody's got to take some responsibility for themselves. I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. You do whatever you decide to do. So in the instructions it shows that there's going to be a 5/8 hole that this 1/2-inch bolt will go through, in addition with these brackets here. However, on some vehicles like this one, you may have to drill because there may be a backing plate, a reinforcement plate that is used on the frame. So you can see here where the oil's coming out, there was a hole already in the frame on the outside, but on the inside they had a riveted reinforcement bracket. So you have to drill through that. We went in and just drilled, or in the process of drilling, a 1/2-inch hole. And if you can see here, I don't know how well it's going to come across on camera, but there is a reinforcement bracket from the factory that blocks off that hole partially. The good news is that that bracket isn't very thick at all. So now with that drilled, we can mount loosely. You don't want to do it firmly. Again, you can see the bracket on this side too. You can mount those brackets and the nuts and the washers that corresponds. It's the biggest two bolts, nuts, and washers that's in the kit that will hold those brackets on the side. Again, you're not going to, you're just going to loosely tighten it for the time being because you need to make sure everything gets aligned. So the next thing that we have to do after that, now that those two holes are drilled, and again, we'll get those brackets up there, we have to take loose the lower shock mount. Now in our case, we need to replace the shocks anyways, and even if you take off the lower shock bolt here, it's probably not going to give you enough room or leeway to get this thing out of the way so you can drill this bracket. So it's probably best to just go ahead and take the shock all the way off. Like I said, we got to replace the shocks anyway, so these bolts here will loosen, and of course this bolt here, the shock will come out, and then we can position the bracket to see where we need to drill next. So what I'm going to show you now is kind of the plate orientation. If you want to look, these plates, they're going to go on that lower shock mount. You can see there's 4 holes on one side, 3 holes on the other, and they do have an angle to them. And they want you to position this on the shock mount so that it kind of turns flush. So there's got to be a certain angle for that bar to match up. And what it does is the shock mounts are at an angle. So this takes away that angle and makes it kind of 90 degrees or perpendicular, or I should say parallel to the axle when this is mounted correctly. So it says that you are to use the 2 existing holes that are on the shock mount in the instructions. There isn't 2 holes. And if you read the instructions further in the diagram, it says use existing hole and then use drilled hole. And I've got to figure out how I'm going to position that. But I'm going to talk about something as far as the design of this first. I was concerned whenever I seen that actually the sway bar would be using the factory stock lower shock mounts that are welded to the housing or the axle tubes of the axles to kind of support this sway bar. And I was concerned that it was kind of like a last ditch thrown in effort, that a lot of the sway bars that I've seen for other vehicles, they U-clamp, they got a big U-bolt and they clamp to the axle tube themselves. So let me bring this underneath, I'll show you, and then I'll show you why I don't think it's a concern at all at this point. So if you're looking at the mount, this is where the shocks went. This is where the shock was mounted and went up to the top of the van there, in the frame actually. There is one hole. There is a single hole here. The thing is you need to have to where you can mount your sway bar back here on this. Then it's going to wrap around, which we'll see later, and then it will come up to this mount that we have here. And that's basically how this works. It doesn't allow the axle to move and twist in any strange way without it, torsioning all the way across the van to help out on the other side too. So basically what this plate does is, again, using the 3 holes, that's what's going to mount against the factory shock mount. Now this is where I was concerned. Whenever they built this van, I don't think they necessarily thought, well, maybe one day we're going to need something above and beyond this normal shock mount that's welded on this tube to handle anything more than a shock absorber. Now, there's a lot of people back in the 70s that used to run air shocks, and I've always thought that was a really bad idea because obviously, this wasn't designed to support the weight of the vehicle. It was just designed to hold the absorber and keep it from, this moving up and down too quickly. So there was some resistance there, and at times it may see a lot of the van weight, whenever it comes down. But for the most part, those air shocks were a bad idea because they were always holding up the van and or car or whatever it was. They put them on everything back then. And as you drove down the road, of course, it's always beating on this. Now, most of the time the shocks would break because these things are welded so well. But still, I was concerned, and I was wondering about that. So in just a second here, after I show you this orientation, why I don't think that's an issue anymore, and why it actually is probably welcomed. I do this best I can with this camera and the angle that you have. Right now you're looking towards me. This is the right rear tire, and this is the right rear shock mount. And you're facing the front of the van and up, of course, into the mount. The one thing that you got to be aware of is, again, this orientation of the plate. You can see the plate has a bevel to it. And first of all, you're going to mount 3 holes, the 3-hole side. And what you want to do is put it up against this. Yep, there we go. I could have screwed up myself. In that manner. So basically, if you look, it's actually bending. If we just fold it down like this, it's actually bending towards the front of the van, or closer to the axle. Now, as far as I know right now, this is correct. I've got to double check it, but right now this looks correct. So the bolt that's going to go through the existing bolt hole, I'm going to go ahead and just put it through the middle for now, because I think that's where it's going to go. There is a potential that it's supposed to go down here. I don't know that for sure. There is a potential that it might go up here. I seriously doubt that. So it's either going to be here, and I'm drilling another hole at the bottom, or it's going to be here, and I'm drilling another hole at the bottom. So either way, I'm going to be drilling another hole at the bottom, but I'm pretty darn sure it's going to be in the middle. And again, that curve is going towards the front, and what it does is it takes the angle that this is at, it's relatively parallel, equal to the line of the axle. There is a slight bend inwards, but nothing crazy. This is a 2020 F350. We had a 2019 F250, but I wanted the bigger gas tank, and of course it's got that Godzilla engine in it. If you guys may have seen on my channel already. The reason I'm coming to the back is because this has a camper package accessory, and basically what that means is this is rated to handle one of those big campers that slide into the bed. You know, one of those big monsters with the overhang that goes over top of the truck. Well, this truck is rated to carry up to a certain amount. I think it's about 4,000 pounds I can put back here. But one of the ways that it gets that certification rating is by having a sway bar on the rear. So let's go ahead and climb underneath here and I'll show you. Look where they mount the sway bar. To the shock mount. So this is 2020 and they're putting the sway bars on the shock mounts. So after I seen that, I have no problem putting that shock mount to the test on the old E150 there. So here is what I can tell is the magic combination for this situation. Sounds like a song, don't it? Okay, like I said, nothing is tight still. If something changes here, obviously, at the end here, I'll show you the finished product, but I've got everything pretty much lined up the way it should be, straight up and down. And this gets to be really tight through here. And so much so that this bolt here has to go up. The one that's in the existing hole, that bolt goes up and the nut goes on. The shock does clear. I've checked that. I checked it. Now, this one here, this one too, could do the same and go up. The problem that I see with that though, and let me get you lighted up here a little better. The problem I can see with that though, is that if you're installing new shocks, there's going to be a bolt in the way. That one's got to go down. Let's just say that one's got to go down. So the reason that this one back here has to go up is so it clears the sway bar. Let's see if I can get you flipped around here a little bit different. You can see essentially it's right above the sway bar. All right, so here, let's talk about something different. You need to put this bolt in, this bolt, for the saddle before you tighten these two bolts, because once these are tightened, this bolt won't clear the axle to go down, and you can't go up with it because the threads, when it's tight, will hit into the housing a little bit. Now you may have enough space, you may have drilled it a little bit different, you might be able to get away with it, but essentially that's what I would do. Make sure that bolt goes down. Of course, I just went ahead and made that bolt go down too. There's no sense in having doing one and not the other for no apparent reason. Now I did snug all this up just to see what it looked like here, and it looks pretty good. They're talking about 30 foot-pounds for torque on these. That seems about right. I'm sure it's the same for these two. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my efforts on the other side. I haven't even drilled over there yet, and we'll tighten everything up then and see what it looks like. Yeah, this is going to be nice. All right, so that bracket is tight, as is the up and down stabilizer. Just went ahead and torqued it down until it got to the point where the threads had stopped. Doesn't have to be overly tight. Once that was tight on both sides, I went ahead and tightened these brackets down. And this is it. This is the final product, and it looks very good. It looks very factory-like. So the concern is right here in these brackets and how you position them. You're just going to have to follow exactly what I did if your vehicle looks this way. If not, I don't know what to tell you. But bolt down, as you can see, clear access to the shock. Bolt up back here, and the reason that we did bolt up was, again, you can see how close everything is right there. It would have definitely hit on some level, but it looks very, very good. Let's take a look of it from the back side. See, looks relatively factory, and nothing weird going on. The stabilizers are perpendicular, straight up and down, so that's good. And the bar Of course, is even all the way across. Everything is nice and snug there, so I think this is going to do a good job. So, how long does it take? I would think this would probably take 2 hours. If I had all the tools and we were all ready to go, 2 hours. The thing was, my son, it's his van. He wanted to do a lot of the work, but today I just wanted to finish it out. We would have finished it out last night, but one of the batteries had run out on one of the power tools, so we couldn't drill the holes basically, and we had to cut off a shock. So this is what I want you guys to do. Please help support this channel and videos that just like this showing how to do these kind of repairs. Use the links in the description. Whatever it is you need, please use the link in the description. In this case, I'm going to put a link in the description for the ADDCO sway bar that I just used. It was the cheapest one. I know Hellwig makes one, but it's much more expensive. I will have to say that the Hellwig is probably better. However, when we're talking about these vans, I mean, I don't think I need to spend that kind of money on a van that potentially I could buy for $3,000 somewhere. Whenever you're starting to get into the the $400, $500 range, that's a healthy portion of what the van's worth is. But we did go with the ADDCO. Again, the link will be down below. I'll try to do Amazon. I might even put an eBay link in there too. I appreciate this, guys, and I hope this helped out. Again, take your time, don't rush it, and you're going to find yourself doing just fine, as long as you keep everything loose, including your attitude, until the very end, then tighten everything down. I appreciate it. Check you out next time.